everybody, and welcome back to Screen Stars, and welcome to another PlayStation 4 review. Today I'm here to review the brand new RPG Greedfall that was released last week, and it is published by Focus and developed by Spiders. Now Spiders are a French games developer. They have released things previously, Bound by Flame, which you may remember, that was a fairly poorly received RPG, but it had some decent ideas going for it that I wasn't overly impressed with, but I did play it. And Technomancer is another, it was like a sci-fi RPG from about 2 or 3 years ago that I also bought and played, and I played about 25 hours of that until I lost interest. So Spiders have always been a promising developer. They've always got like interesting ideas in their games. They're like Western RPGs with like a European twist to them, but they've never managed to really get them to work before. Now, have they managed to deliver here with Greedfall? This game has been getting a lot of exposure over the last few months leading up to its release. Quite a bit of hype actually, and there's not really many top RPGs on the horizon. So a lot of RPG fans, which I class myself as, they're my number one choice of game. I've been looking forward to this game. However, there was I think because I've played Spiders games before and I've never been overly impressed with them, even though there has been some promise in them, I wasn't that excited for this game. There was nothing about the footage really that particularly blew me away. It didn't look like a graphical powerhouse. It didn't look particularly different than anything I've played before. So I wasn't super excited for this game. However, I did decide to pick it up on the day of its release, and I've put in now probably about 25 hours into this game. And now I'm not one of these that believes you need to rush through a game in a couple of days, finish it and then put a review up, because usually when you rush through a story in a game you miss loads of stuff. You don't get time to absorb the game, you just rush through it. And I've taken my time with this game. I played a couple of hours here and there, and this game has actually impressed me more than I expected it to, but it is seriously flawed at the same time, and in many areas, and veterans of RPGs when they play this game will know exactly what I mean. It's a bit rough around the edges, this game, but ultimately it delivers a fairly satisfying Western RPG that I think fans of this genre will probably get something out of. I've seen some fairly harsh reviews for this game, I've seen some reasonably kind reviews for this game, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle really. You know, I think there's lots to enjoy about this game, and I'll talk about some of those now. Graphics on this game, there are times when Greedfall looks really beautiful. Some of the environments are really beautiful, the lighting is really beautiful, some of the character models at a distance look pretty good, but there are other times in this game where it looks like a last gen game. Some of the cutscenes, some of the character models look terrible at times, and the lip syncing is amongst the worst I've ever seen in a game, a wide release game like this. Now I know Spiders are compared to other studios, it's a really quite small studio. So I do kind of understand some of the graphical issues that we see here, but I think for a partially open world RPG it delivers for the most part in regards to graphics, but it is not in the same level as Witcher 3 or some other graphical powerhouses out there in regards to Horizon Zero Dawn and all these other big top-notch RPGs. It's not in the same league as them, but it holds its own. The gameplay here is pretty much what you would expect from an RPG of this type. You get to create your own character at the beginning, male or female, and it's a reasonably in-depth character customization. And then you get to choose what class you're going to be, whether you're going to be a warrior, whether you're going to be like a mage type of thing. But you can change, you can swap and change as you play through the game. You can, if you start off being a mage and using magic and you don't like it, you can always, you know, change all your skill points and put them into melee and become like a warrior and a swordsman, or a rogue type character, or somewhere in between. It's quite flexible in your approach. I chose the warrior approach, as I tend to in most RPGs, which means, you know, I'm strong with melee weapons and rifles and things like that. The combat here is, what I would say, if you like the combat in Witcher 3 and you're quite impressed with that combat, you're going to be okay with the combat here. In a lot of ways it's very, very similar. It's limited. You've got like a light attack, then you've got like a kicking thing you can do. It looks a bit stupid. And then you've got a rifle, like a ranged attack at the same time. You can swap to 2 different weapons, and you've got like a powerful attack as well. It's actually quite limited, but the combat can be reasonably effective. And to be honest, I've never really got particularly tired of the combat. It actually works quite well, but it's actually quite simplified too, so don't expect too much from the combat. The story here is a bit hit and miss. Now, if you're not a patient player, and let's be honest, if you're an RPG fan, you probably are a patient player, because RPGs are long games usually if they're done properly, and you need a little bit of patience to play them and get into them. So if you're a veteran of RPGs, you're probably going to be alright with this game, because, and you need to be, because this game, the first 3 or 4 hours, are dull as dishwater. It spends all its time introducing you to all these different factions, all these different political elements in the game, all your companions, and you've got to do missions for all these factions and stuff to introduce you to them all, and you're learning all the politics of the game, and it's just dull. It's like the gaming world's version of Brexit. You know what I mean? The first 3 or 4 hours are a real grind, I found, but once you get through what you can call the tutorial stage, the story picks up, and the game opens up a bit more, and it becomes more enjoyable, and you start getting used to everything, the mechanics and things like that. The voice acting on display here is of good quality throughout. Didn't have any complaints with any of the voice acting. Some of it's a bit weird, like some of the natives have got like this weird South African Irish accent that's a bit odd, but you get used to it. The enemies that you face in the game, there's not as many as you actually might think. There's plenty like beasts and human enemies and things like that, and there's quite a few bosses in the game to take out and things like that. It keeps you interested. If you explore in the game, any good RPG, it rewards exploration, and this game's no different. If you prepare to explore the map that you're on, you will find some, you know, nice things. You've got your crafting in this game, as you would expect, and all the usual RPG mechanics that you would expect in a game like this, in the sense of RPG progression. You've got skill trees where you can put different things in. You can put things in charisma so that you can charm people by talking to them. You can put them in science, and you can put them in lockpicking. You've got most of the main missions, you can complete them in a few different ways. You don't have to just go in one way and one way only, and if you don't do it that way, it's game over. You have a few options. You can stealth your way in, you can go in heavy-handed, you can talk your way in. Most of the missions give you that flexibility to be able to finish the missions the way you choose, which is a really, really strong point for this game. It does give you some flexibility, and you are able to do what you want in regards to how you complete the missions, which is really, really nice. As I mentioned, you have companions here in the game. Don't expect much with these companions, is the best I can say. They're not particularly bubbling with personality, but you do have loyalty missions to get to know them, and if you get on the nerves, or if you do things that they are displeased with, it won't end well. So you've got to kind of keep them on side. You've got to do these loyalty missions, which is nice, and you can choose 2 companions at any one time to come with you, and you swap them over at campsites. Very similar to Dragon Age Inquisition, you know, when you go to those camps and you can swap the companions and things like that at these camps. Very similar concept here. Now, it's not fully open world, this game. It's like smaller maps. Again, think about Dragon Age Inquisition, you know, the small maps that you would go to there, the smaller areas. It's very, very similar here, and you will be looking at quite a few load screens, because you'll get dropped in this hub, and then if you want to move on to the next area, you choose to move on to the next area, and then you get another loading screen, and then you're back in, and then so on and so forth. So it does feel a little bit old-fashioned in regards to looking at loading screens quite a lot, but they're not overly long loading screens, so you kind of get used to it. So my overall impressions with Greedfall are that if you're prepared to put the time into this game, if you're prepared to get past the first 3 or 4 hours that really are quite dull, there is quite a rewarding RPG right at the end of it. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think I'm being a little bit generous there, but I'm quite enjoying my time in the game. It's not an overly intense RPG or anything. It's quite a relaxed, laid back one, and there is some fun to be had if you're prepared to put the time and effort into this game. So that's my review for Greedfall. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and of course I'll see you next time on Screen Stars.